Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for my panelists. So, my lady and gents, so there's a paradigm shift, as already indicated, where brands are looking more into being more collaborative than being competitive. So historically in business, what you look at is brands that fight for market share, which is quite valid because it turns out to revenue. But more and more we find in brands that are going along and trying to find value in collaboration. So Nosi, I'm going to start with you. So especially in the automotive space where you find yourself, what does collaboration over competition look like in that industry before I turn over to the next question?
I'm just checking if my mic's working. Hi, everybody. So in automotive space, it is, what we look at is shared audience. So we have a look at what other brands are doing, because instead of starting from scratch, you, especially because there are limited budgets in some instances, you have a look at who's talking to the people that you're looking to talk to. And then you just piggyback on that. And in the automotive space, what we've done with Renault, post-COVID, we had aged product. So we don't launch all the time. We don't launch vehicles all the time. And then you find there's new vehicles that are coming that are better than you, and we have limited budgets. So instead of trying to compete, we just have a look at who's out there and what entities are out there that we can collaborate with. And what we did is we looked into sports marketing, and through the sponsorship of netball, cricket, tennis and golf. I'm an avid golfer, so I had to be involved with golf. But then we had a look at those are the people, and sports is such a positive community builder activity, and it talks to all sorts of audiences. There's different tiers. And through that, just by giving cars and some financial contribution, then we have access to all the people. And through that, then you kind of doing the marketing thing of brand awareness, brand affinity, engagement, etc. But you're also building and forming relations moving forward. And there's a lot of other opportunities that come from that. Such as, globally, Renault sponsors Roland Garros, which is a tennis tournament at the French Open. And from our collaboration with Tennis South Africa, we got tickets to go and watch the finals and semifinals in Paris. And from that, then we ran a test drive and win competition nationwide. So you have people going and test driving new Renaults, and we had a couple go win. We hosted 2 ladies and took them to Paris, and they had that entire experience. And because I was hosting, I got the privilege of also going there. But now, what happens is, from that one partnership, we've managed to also roll it out from a global point of view. So it's put the South African Renault market in global's perspective. And from that activation, then we have, it just so happened that the winners were, young people, 32-year-old 2 ladies, and they were so into social media, etc. So that one activation then translated into a social influencer setup where people were, they were taking videos, and it was trending in that way. I must commend all influencers. It's a tough job. I mean, before we even left, I was already exhausted from taking pictures. I had never taken so many videos of people crossing the street so many times, and they get up, they do their makeup, and then they have to get up again and look like they woke up like that. So it was quite an interesting experience. But what I'm trying to say is, from the one collaboration through sport, it opened a lot of avenues for us to market our brand in a sense that is not traditional and didn't really require us spending on advertising and the mainstream source of advertising. So it's very important, and there's a lot of value to that.
Thank you so much, Nosipho. And what I'm picking up from that is there's a mutually beneficial relationship to what you're saying, both the influencer and the business in itself. And especially with companies that you are a part of, Renault is not traditionally South African, it's a French company, as you indicated. So looking at the value that it provides for the influencer in this instance, the other part, so speaking to the ecosystem of it. So it's not only the big brands that actually get a share in this, you are actually proving to catapult the shared knowledge to the upcoming people as well, because influencers are generally a one-man business in instances, so it's quite important. Caveating to you, Tumelo, you're in a very interesting space, sports, and when it comes to legendary big names that hold quite big brand equity is nothing new. It's absolutely nothing new for us. How do you then get into a boardroom and convince the decision makers that are sitting there around what brands or the guidance that you give in terms of brand alignment? Who are you bringing on the table? How does that decision-making process look like for you in particular when you're sitting with multidisciplinary people? You're sitting with CFOs that are looking at their money, they're looking at revenue, and you're looking at a CMO who's looking at their brand equity, and you get the honor or the misfortune of trying to bring these two worlds together. Exactly, to bring these two worlds together that everybody is happy, revenue-wise and brand equity growth for companies. How does that look like in your world?
Okay, well, in my world, the answer is very simple, and the answer is with data or data, whichever way you choose to pronounce it. And just to give people context around why I say that is that, my experience and what I do on a day-to-day basis is I work with data. So we work in sports sponsorship research. It's essentially a market research agency that analyzes different things such as audiences, fan consumption, fan behavior, fan interest, fan awareness, and fan participation levels of sports, of brands, of music, of lifestyle content, right? Sure. And interestingly, I always say this, that I sit at the epicenter of the entire sports ecosystem or the entire sports industry, and I measure the effectiveness of that integration, of that collaboration that Nosipho spoke about in terms of what are advertising agencies creating and communicating around a brand, what are broadcasters doing to go and broadcast that brand, what is happening on the ground in terms of how people are consuming it. So I effectively measure and provide a value behind how effective that integration, that collaboration is. Sure. And quite often the mistake that gets made is that sometimes, you'll go into a sponsorship agreement and your brand will go to a rights holder and say, we want to get into netball, we want to get into tennis. And then everyone says, oh yes, it's X amount of money, go out there and go and do something. And what I've often measured is that where collaboration starts to fall flat is when people start working in silos, or rather where sponsorship falls flat is when people start working in silos. Sure. And you almost need to be able to go and identify, okay, what are the different needs of the different categories or sectors or stakeholders that are involved in here, and how do we collectively understand what's happening in each of those different facets, and how do we make that work? So for me, to be able to go into a boardroom and convince brands, rights holders, broadcasters, agencies, whatever it might be, as to what the perfect model is from a collaboration standpoint is, it's simple enough for me to go and say, well, what does the data say? Let's look at the numbers. What do your numbers say? Do you understand that person's numbers over their numbers? How do you how do you align everything so that whatever it is that you're working on and whatever you're delivering succinctly delivers against what the objectives are?
Perfect. So key takeaway for me that, ladies and gentlemen, is know your business, know what you're wanting to do with your business. So when you're actually sitting with decision makers on there, you've got a good story to tell. There's been a common thread in the presenters that have come and spoken to us throughout the morning in that, what's your selling point? What are you selling? So by the time you get to these pivotal conversations that Tumelo and Nosipho have spoken about, you actually have the answers to those questions. Are you actually doing data research on your impact? Are you actually looking at your audience? If somebody's to eloquently ask you right now, who is your audience? Are you able to dissect that? So I'm just going to poke your thoughts on that while we continue with the conversation. Bronson, sports. We are a South African nation, us sports lovers through and through. So, and obviously because it's it's a powerful tool, connects us all together. It brings an emotional view in terms of how you view a certain sporting code, and largely brands and marketing play a very, very huge role when it comes to that as well. So what trends are you seeing that are shaping the future of brand partnerships in sports in general, so across the sporting codes in both South Africa and globally? Because, we don't exist in silos. So intersections between the global market and South Africa's are quite pivotal in how we look at trends. So how does that look like in your world?
Oh, my world depends when you start. So when Greg spoke here about age, I was like, damn it, this guy is revealing our age. I'm 50 in a few months.
We need the golden oldies.
So,
that knowledge is very valuable.
The reason I'm mentioning it is, I guess I've been around for a while in this world. So being on the brand side, Unilever back in the day, Standard Bank when they had sponsorship of Chiefs and Pirates, Nike in sports marketing, so relationship with the athletes during the World Cup, then heading up an agency, and then Vodacom sponsorships, and now on the other side as a rights holder in my life at SASCO, the Olympic and Paralympic Committee. There's a lot of work to be done around our brand name. I just joined, so we need to fix that, because when you say SASCO, people are like, what the hell are you on?
I just arrived.
You know, but ultimately we play in two roles. One is managing and administration of sport, but the one that people ultimately get to see is us taking the team to the Olympics and Paralympics and a few other games. We're actually off to China on Sunday to the World Games.
Sure.
But critical to all of that ultimately is, I think a big part of coming in is SASCO has never really had a marketing head. And because in the past sponsorship was easy, man.
Sure.
You know, I come from the days when brands were throwing parties. Money was in abundance. Vodacom used to sponsor the Vodacom Bulls, playing the Vodacom Cheetahs at Vodacom Stadium in the Vodacom Cup.
Yeah.
So money didn't matter.
Capital.
Spend. But unfortunately, we're not living in that world anymore. So I think, yeah, in the brands that I've mentioned, critical to it is the relationships that are critical in that point. So Nike ultimately built itself on athletes.
Sure.
You know, before even people spoke of influencer, it was, and it's still the business. It was a simple model, great brand, great athletes, great story. Formula is simple, but it takes a lot to make it work. Mosito over there has lived in the Nike world, and so he can attest to what I'm saying. So I guess it's just trying to bring those lessons in whatever we're doing at SASCO, because, you know, there's a job to be done when people see that SASCO is like, okay, when Olympics happen only, but there's work to be done now. So the preparation of the athletes is a story on its own. Sure. The presentation of the athletes is a job on its own, you know, to get them there, pre-training camps, also the winning, because what I'm trying to get away from is when people say, okay, where are the medals? Yeah, they matter, but there's a bigger story than the medals. So all the stories you heard today, yes, success in some way, but it wasn't about it stops and ends there. So from a collaboration perspective, brands matter a lot, but we also have to show value ultimately to those brands, because ultimately sponsorship is an exchange of value.
Sure.
So in my branding days, they used to speak of build and borrow, or what are you building, what are you borrowing from another brand. So, importantly is ultimately the value, because Nosipho has been looked by the bosses to go and say, what is this thing doing for us?
Hundreds.
You know, gone are the days of, it's brand building, it's nice, you know, it matters, but unfortunately, you know, results matter. And I think it's also about what are those results. Because collaboration, I think as I was just looking at the definition, is about a common goal and a common objective. So if those are aligned, then it's an easier story to tell. So ultimately for me is ongoing, is about how you're evolving, because consumption has changed.
Sure.
We love sport. We just watch it differently. You know, I've got a 17-year-old son, and he's on his phone, he's talking to his friends. I'm saying the match is on. He's like, I'm watching, but I'm like, you're not watching. Yeah. You know, but there's a different consumption, but he's watching the same thing. Yeah. You know, but I guess it's just about consumption is changing, and therefore it's critical for brand people to understand how that consumption is changing, you know, including agencies that they work with, because it doesn't just end there. You know, campaigns ultimately come to life as a result of agencies. The music experience that we went through now on its own matters. So I think at its core is about just understanding the consumer, your audience, your market, both from a rights holder, which we are in, as well as brand, as well as agencies. And I think when that magic comes together, it's just a powerful story, and I think it's just powerful impact at the end of the day.
Sure, perfect. You've introduced something very, very interesting, and it speaks to the questions that I've just asked. I'm going to follow up with that to say catering for the intergenerational market. You've spoken about how your consumption patterns versus your son's consumption patterns. You are both possible consumers. You're both a person that I can draw revenue from in that context. It's become complex, obviously, for marketers and entrepreneurs as well, where you're dealing with these kind of complexities, where you're dealing with the intergenerational audience. What does that look like from a SASCO perspective? Because ultimately, and I'm going to pull and borrow from your previous experiences as well, from a corporate lens and a rights owner, what does that look like in terms of, I'm sitting here, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a marketer, and my audience and the people that I'm actually catering my business for is intergenerational. I'm a smallholder. I don't have the capital enough, as you indicated in the Vodacom context, where I can push my capital to it, and whatever bites. I don't have that luxury, so I have to be laser focused in terms of addressing the needs of both audiences, but getting the best possible outcome with it.
Yeah, I think there's an old saying in marketing.
Sure.
50% of what you spend is wasted. You just don't know which one.
Scary.
And that, I think, will forever be true.
Yeah.
You know, I think social media is just a new way of connecting with people. It's not that connection is suddenly new.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we forget that. And I think critical to that is understanding the audience. And it's a pity that I've left the marketing side for a while and coming back, I guess, in a different form now, is almost consumer understanding has died, man. Not dying or dying in my eyes.
Okay.
You know, in the past, we used to, when I was in my Unilever days, we used to go and sit in Ndwedwe, in KZN, and watch mothers do their laundry. Because you had to understand, you know, pH of water in that world was different. So when you came there and you said, okay, we're going to sell this new washing powder, and people are like, but my water is flowing. So this thing of you telling me about foam, I don't even see foam. Therefore, the green bar is what works for me in that world. So easily we could have come and said, okay, we're going to give you the best washing powder, as the comment was made earlier.
Sure.
The best is not necessarily what people kind of connect with.
Yeah.
So I think it's a big part of that is just consumer understanding. And I wish a lot more marketers, this is my wish, marketers can just go back to being curious. I think curiosity is dying. You know, it's easy to say, I'm on social media. But why are you on social media? Everyone rushed at some point to build apps.
Usability.
Why? You know, yes, app was a thing.
Sure.
You know? But as to the why, I think sometimes we lose that. And by default, the curiosity for me is where that matters around the why. Greg spoke a lot about culture. You can't understand culture without being connected and understanding, you know. So I wish every Friday you can just leave your offices, tell your bosses, we're going to the market. Go see what people are doing, you know. For me, last analogy, was Savannah in COVID. And I'm sure the best job was to be the Savannah brand manager because it was just selling. But it wasn't selling because of the marketing.
Exactly.
It was the Mapiano thing and the people there, you know. But that's not you doing it. The market did it itself. But you needed to be there to understand why it's happening. And then how you can capitalize on that moment.
Sure.
You know. So, and I think that's where, for me, the power of marketing is in terms of just being connected and just spending time curious. We are all brand builders in some form here, you know, and we're going to one day speak to a brand. Can we get some of your money? So if we're not speaking the language of why Nosipho is wanting to sell cars, it doesn't matter. You know, if one day the car is not moving, you could have the best marketers, the best brand, the best agencies. If the cars are not moving,
there's no business. Chip in? No, you can.
And speak of knowing your customer, it's bloody cold in front here. Clearly, whoever's managing the aircon is not black.
Market research, market research, market research. That's all I'm saying. You can jump in, Sis Nos.
Sorry, I just wanted to respond from the brand's point of view.
Sure.
So we, in my position, I'm in a very difficult position where I have to manage corporate. Corporate is made up of people, as you say, from the golden oldies, where they used to advertise on TV and they have a working formula, and the mandate is tick the box of the working formula. So I fully agree with what you say when you say, marketers, brand managers need to be curious. So you stay relevant. You find out what is going on with the market. The interesting thing is that I always take to business, and speaking to the Nielsen discussion, data is very important, because then I take that and then I motivate to the people that pay us all. Sure. Right? To the stakeholders and all of those. But it's also very, very relevant that you get to talk to the people in the platforms that they're in. We sell Quid. Quid at the moment is selling for 1,999 a month. I mean, that is township. It is in this e-hailing space. All the Uber drivers, those people, they're into Quid. But the Renault Global is premium. They are into electric vehicles. So it's a very fine balancing act that a person like me has to do, where I take the global premium, but I also need to have the
nuance.
The South African translation of taking a product that's seen as premium and selling it into a not premium market. So collaborations is one of the avenues that we use, where we take soccer, and those are the people that would be driving the Quid, and just speaking of then taking that which is seen as such a nicety and finding a way to measure is where people like Nielsen come in, and it's a very important thing, because in a business we have to. The example that I gave about the experience of taking people to Paris, etc., had to translate in return on investment for the business, and those are in the numbers. So if I run a test drive campaign, the numbers of how many people got to test drive, we generated 7,000, by the way, over 7,000 in 1 month. So that then motivates the check writers to say, okay, Nosipho, where else do you want to, where else? Like who else, and these influencers, and you see the engagement. What I find difficult in my position is I have youngsters, or I can say new entrepreneurs, that don't have the information, and they come in and they just want sponsorship. You must sponsor. Yeah, we're in the previously disadvantaged, we're in the community, which is all good and well. So my advice would be, when you go to any brand, find your value proposition. As Bronson said, you need to have a look at what is it that I bring to the table? What is it that makes me unique? And that's how you show up. And that will help me also narrow down who do we participate with, etc.
Fantastic, fantastic. Osman. Osmic.
Yeah.
Sure. You want to change the conversation quite a bit, because you're in a very interesting space as well, where culture is quite big, especially for majority of us in the audience right here. You've created a phenomenal concept called Back to the City Festival. And I'm sure one thing I appreciate about this, and part of my opening podcast was going to be this: to start anything requires some crazy audacity to do, because you don't have a proof point. When you sit in a room, corporates want a proof of concept. You just listen, you just indicate this is nosy. And it takes a particularly special kind of person to articulate their vision so well that somebody buys in without knowing what the possible outcomes may be. You can fail dismally, or you can excel at it. And that's, Osmic, you've done that. What were the pitfalls, or what was integral to your success, rather? Let's start there. Was integral to your success into the Back to City Festival? Because you've indicated this as well, to say, it's all good that we sit in such platforms and we talk about successes, and everybody sees the glam. Nobody glamorizes the process. Nobody really knows the sleepless nights around it, the no's, the number of rejections that you had to get. So take us through that. Take us through how Back to the City Festival and all your other endeavors were pre the success.
Success.
Relative.
I don't know about that word. We've just been around long. We just try to hold on for as long as possible. So the things we do, for those that don't know who on earth I am or what I do, you've got a company called Ritual Media Group, and the company's idea is always to start properties that are rooted within culture. 19 years ago, we started this thing called Back to the City Hip Hop Festival. 15 years ago, we started this thing called South African Hip Hop Awards. 16 years ago, we started this thing called South African Hip Hop Summit. And for the last 6 years, we've been building the South African Hip Hop Museum, which to date makes it, I think, the first permanent hip hop museum in the world.
I think that deserves a round of applause.
I just wish I had the money to finish it.
It's coming, Osmic.
I think for me, how all these things have happened, it's just been pure passion. I always say I'm one of the very few people that can say passion has literally, that's all I do. When I wake up in the morning, it's from culture, right? Sure. And I think that passion and that zeal, I think it's, for me, it's been the most important thing. Because I've seen, obviously, a lot of other things come purely because saying, oh, okay, he's getting money. So that means if I start the same thing, they'll also come to me. Not also sometimes understanding, some of these key learnings. We speak about, these brands and government. And I always say, I think a lot of people also don't give props to government, because I'm one of the people that I can safely say my first sponsor before corporates, when corporates would give me, they want to give me 24 packs and say they want to sponsor, government was the one place that said, well, we don't understand this thing you're doing, but, here's 50,000, here's 100,000, So I think for me, it's that. I think passion is important.
Sure.
I think finding way to bring commerce into that passion is important, because it does come a time where, like with the festival, you end up with 20,000 people, and the cost of making this thing is 20 million. That's how much it costs to make this festival. Then it comes to, obviously, how do we start speaking to brands? And at the end of the day, there's key things that obviously we always make sure that we hit, because we're playing in this space where we've understood numbers, right? Where we know very well that the festival is on TV. If it's on TV, it hits about 3 million viewership. Brands want to chase that. So it's key for us, because people are always saying, why don't you go to this other station? Why you keep sticking to SABC One? And we say, because we need those numbers, right? And the same thing applies with sort of these different acts that we book, because you've got acts where you given the platform you want to make big, but also the important thing where our role sits is to invest in that culture. So I think that's in a little bit of a nutshell. Yeah.
Sure. I'm going to follow up on that. So you mentioned something quite pivotal in terms of who was able to give you a chance then. So and I'm sure in the beginning, like you indicated, people give you a chance without understanding what the concept was about at that point.
Well, after you've put your money up first. So 100%. I think that's key. So I think for the first 4 years, you had to put your own money up. We spoke about the Hip Hop Museum. To date, I've spent about 8.5 million rand from my pocket in the vision to say, this is what I've done. I put my own money up. Whether you bringing your money in as a brand or government, I'm not waiting. At some point, this thing will get launched.
Sure. I had a follow-up, but I'm going to open it up to the floor. We are running out of time. So I'm just going to open it up to the floor to pose any questions to these astute panel for it. There is a hand there, Gent.
Astute.
Oh yeah, there's the mic. Got you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Nosipho. I just had a question in regard to the main topic in terms of collaboration being, I guess, the new competition.
Sure.
Where, and I guess because all four of you, like your various intersections of the marketing and the creative space, what role does relationships play, Tumelo, for you? I guess you sort of, like you said, you exist at the epicenter of that conversation in terms of bringing brands to rights holders. Bronson, from a federation perspective, in terms of tapping into your old corporate background, like in terms of bringing new partners, what value and what role does relationships play? Osmic, I've seen you going up and down in Brooklyn, you know, tapping into iconic hip-hop acts who other properties wouldn't be able to source with all the money in the world. So like, what value do relationships have in the work that you do?
Perfect. Brilliant question. I'm going to start with you, Tumelo, and then you can chime in anybody after that.
Cool. I think in my world, relationships are important because relationships connect you to people, right? They connect you to things, people, places that you may have never ever known about or have had the ability to go to. And in doing so, I think relationships also open up doors for you. But just because you've got the relationships and you've got the networks, it doesn't mean that it starts and then from there it just trickles upwards. I think you still need to be able to go and justify your worth, justify your being, go in there with a product that obviously can be utilized, that can be sold to just beyond yourself and to all the people in the room. I think you still need to be able to go and back yourself and convince the people in those very rooms that you've been exposed to that you are worth and you are who and what you say you are. So from a relationship perspective, definitely try and connect and try and open up your network as much as possible, but don't go into those rooms without having the necessary information to back yourself up.
He said it all. Yeah, but I think the power is in the nurturing of the relationships.
Yeah.
You know, I think there was a comment made earlier about you don't know who's next to you in the room. So I think, yeah, and sometimes it's not human nature to just reach out, find out what you do. And then there was also an analogy back in the day when people still use this thing called a business card. I know young people are confused about what is a business card. Now it's a QR code. But there was a thing that said, okay, now you've got a person's business card. Are you going to follow up? Because the intent is where the power lies. Because you can get everyone's business card here. The person who will make a difference is the one that follows up.
Yeah.
We met here, and hopefully with good intentions. Not that you look beautiful and go on a date. But I think it's just about how you nurture those relationships is the more powerful thing for me, as opposed to just having relationships. Even in marriage, some of us, date night, all these things that you get told about, because it's in the nurturing where the power
100%.
lies, as opposed to just, I know someone, because your phone book could be full. I remember, last one, when I was at Vodacom, somebody said, bro, you're only important here because of that chair you're sitting in. Don't believe you are the chair. Because when you leave, somebody is going to be, the most important person will be the one there. And funny enough, when I left, I went to an agency where we were phoning people to go and say, okay, come sponsor the Springboks or come sponsor. Yeah, then you knew where friendships lied. And your phone call, back then you were invited, come to golf, come in. You've flown to Leopard Creek, and then now you phone, you can't even get around. But relationships, I guess, it's just in the nurturing. For me, that's where it lies.
Yeah, I just want to add that you're very right. The position you hold does matter because then are you talking to the right person? But get your foot in the door. Get your foot in the door. You like everybody's been reiterating. You don't know who you're talking to. You might be talking to the guy that's in charge of the sound. But the guy that's in charge of the sound is in a room with the guy that you want. But now you've made not a good impression with a guy, and show up authentically as yourself, irrespective of who you're talking to. Because your story and how you show up will get to the right people. We as much as you think corporates and brands and some are global and they're too big for me and I need to be, what they're doing today, photographing, videotaping, everything, that is going to be packaged into a presentation that's going to show up in my office. If I wasn't here, I wouldn't know that this sort of platform exists. And Pet on Brands is one of 1,000 that I get to see. And how do they stand out? If you can't articulate verbally to a presentation, you only have one chance. Package it in a way that will, the people that are getting the sponsorships, the people that are getting the partnerships, because they know how to package and they use that one opportunity very, very well. What I found with our community brownies, I'm referring to, you get the opportunity, but then you're like, hey, sister, and it's so lackluster. It doesn't really, you don't take yourself seriously. If you value what your business has to offer, if you value what your brand is trying to build, make sure that one meeting, if you're able to get a meeting, make sure that you drive it home and you leave an impression. Because, and how do you leave an impression? When you are authentically yourself. If you get into a room and you're trying to use all the big marketing words and the big, and you try and you can't even walk in the heels, I'm going to remember how you stumbled in the heels versus what you had to say. If you are the guy that was doing the music, Adam Howard, I didn't even know him. I want to use him. In what we have to do. And he was here being authentically himself. He didn't hide behind some presentation. He brought the keyboard. And so if you show up in what you do and your passion shines through, I promise you somebody will listen to you sooner than later.
One more.
I think for me, everything everyone said, but most importantly for me, I'd like to say, thank you to Nosipho for our new partnership, the festival.
I was about to, did you see
No
him
pressure.
practice what he
No, I
preaches?
appreciate it.
In the middle of a panel,
I appreciate
he
our
slipped
new-
over for
our
a
new
business
partnership.
card. I was like,
Signed.
yes, sir. Yeah.
Sealed signed on the 1st of
I saw
August.
that.
That's
I saw
it.
that.
That's
Practicing
brand.
what
This
you
5
preach.
million rand partnership,
So
thank
many,
you.
so many witnesses.
Lovely, lovely. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap it up by saying this. Half the job is done before you open your mouth. Take yourself seriously. It's the parting shot. Thank you very much for this, Tato.